near to dying. By the rivers of Babylon, yeah, we sat down and we cried when we remembered Jerusalem. We were sick, Lord, near to dying.
Hallelujah, hallelujah. Blessed be the Most High, King of the universe, Yehudah. Thanking the Creator of heaven and earth for life, food, clothing, and shelter, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Thanking all of you for tuning in once again. Early Shabbat Shalom to everyone out there. Giving all honor, glory, and praise to the Most High, Yehudah. Thanking y'all for joining us once again on another week. And I'm grateful to the Most High God for life, food, clothing, and shelter. So today we're gonna go over Ecclesiastes chapter 3. Nasik will be going over Ecclesiastes chapter 3, and hoping and praying that you get something out of the lesson. And also he will be highlighting some points in the Sedra Bekukotai. So without any further ado, move straight ahead, and I'm going to pass it on to one of my teachers and one of my mentors, even Nasik, Zurishaddai ben Yehudah. How are you, Nasik?
Great, Baruch Hashem. First of all, I'd like to give praises to the Supreme Intelligence of the universe, God of my forefathers, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, and due respect to the platform I'm on, D.C.B channel platform, spiritual leader, Chief Prince Ariel ben Yisrael, host Chief Uzael, to the princes, chiefs, Kohanim, Rabbinate, Maureen, visitors, brothers and sisters. I greet you all in the time of my forefathers. Shalom Aleichem, and an early Shabbat Shalom. And I'd like to start off with Adonai, Septai, Titaku, Yagi, Tiatheka. O Lord, down my lips, and mouth should declare thy praise. I'll be touching on a little bit we'll be finishing the book of Vayikra, most commonly known as Leviticus, this particular portion, before I go into the Ecclesiastes, the third chapter, which is Kohelet itself, the book of Kohelet. That's the actual original name for that particular book, and also another name that Solomon used to refer to himself, and which was most appropriate. Which means that for those that might have, for the first time listening to this, we realized the word Kohelet, means one that assembles. And Quahal is to assemble a person and gather. And as Solomon being a king, he could call an assembly at any given time for the people. But before we go into that, let's deal with this here particular chapter, because we open up with the book of Vayikra with different sacrifices and stuff like that for a person to be able to try to get back, in the closeness with the Creator of heaven and earth. So when we look at the opening chapter, it talks about a bunch of sacrifices and how to atone for certain sins. And people look at it, so since we're so far removed from that particular time period, that we can't envision bringing up an animal, slaughtering the animal, sprinkling blood, doing all that kind of ritual. It would seem kind of archaic to minds today. And that's because we became so far removed from spiritual connections. We started dealing with more secular, ways and means. And this is one of the problems that's brought within even one of the Haftorahs of Jeremiah, when he uses two terms. And before I get into that, I just want to give you the chapters that Bekuthai, which means statues. A kolk is a statue. And that will start from the 26th chapter of Leviticus, the 3rd verse, to the end of the chapter of Leviticus, in which is, the entirety of chapter 27. And the Haftorah would be the book of Jeremiah in the 16th chapter, 19th verse, to the 17th chapter, the 14th verse. When we look at Jeremiah, he uses two terms for a man that, about the human beings, how we actually fall away from the Creator. And he focused in the last couple of verses. I like to focus on in the Haftorah of Jeremiah, which is part of what they call the Amidah prayer, the Amidah prayer, that's read every single day of the week. For those that follow more of a traditional view of reading prayers. But we're going to look first at the different portions, since we're getting ready to close the book. And then talk about, we got 5 different types of sacrifices that's enumerated in the book of Vayikra. And when we read the 5 sacrifices, we just think the sacrifices will be, alluding to each of the 5 books of the scriptures, which I've spoken on in the beginning, which is you have Genesis, known as Bereshit, you have Exodus, known as Shemot, you have Leviticus, known as Vayikra, you have Numbers, known as Bamidbar, and then you have Deuteronomy, which is known as Devarim. Now, what is interesting, and I said that the first part of the sacrifice that it enumerates is about the Olah, the one that's been the burnt offering, fully consumed. It's related to the book of Genesis, and you see those examples being, pursued there. Then we read about, then we talk about the Mincha offering, in which will reflect the book of Exodus, Shemot, and that's because the main thing that's unique about it is we observe a time of CHOKMAH, unleavened bread, in the meal offering. And usually that is the least of an offering that most people will bring up. And it was a humbling experience from a people that was in a bondage state that had to be liberated by a Creator, something beyond their power, without them raising a hand for their own liberation. Then we enter the book of Vayikra, which is represent the Katat offerings, which is the sin offerings. And sin offerings has a dual meaning. That's why I said earlier that a sin offering don't necessarily mean that you actually did something wrong, but it also is a form of purification offerings. Then we're gonna have what you call, and as we get ready to go into the book of Vayikra, Bamidbar, rather, excuse me, that you're gonna have the Asham offerings, which is a guilt offering, which is one of the worst, offenses you could have. And as we go into the book of Bamidbar, which would be afterwards, and talk about it, you're gonna find some of the most horrific things that the nation of Israel had did in relationship to the Creator, and a lot of other things that happened on. So you'll find that area. And then the last is Shalom offerings, which are also thanks offerings. So now I'd like to open up where it says in the 3rd verse of the 26th chapter, it opens up in Bechothai and says that if you walk in my statutes and keep my commandments and do them. Now, one of the interesting parts is they use several terms, 3 terms. In Hebrew, is in Bechothai, Telek, you walk, and that's a statue. Then he used the words, with ed, mitzvothai, which is commandments, orders, and tishmeru, which means you to observe, and then wasitem otam, observe them. All right. So that means that you must do 3 things. Now, what's the difference? Why would you highlight? What is actually saying here is that a statue is something that's going to never, ever, ever change. All right. We're going to always have a Pesach observance. That's like a statue. Right. We're gonna always have something like those holy days that's enumerated in appointed times. Those are statutes and signs. All right. And then those days exist. All right. But then you have what they call commandments, different commandments. So they use the term to walk in the statute. Normally in the Shalosha Regalim, well, for those that may not follow some of the terms I use, the 3 pilgrimage times that we actually walk in there and go in there. And also and that means that we exercise and to participate when we walk in them. That means that we live according to those particular tenets that's expressed there. And Pesach, we emulating certain things. Shavuot, we emulating certain things. Sukkot, we actually emulating certain things. When you talk about observing the commandments, that means guarding. So now you're walking in a particular statue, right? Physically, and you're told to observe God and be studying, be mindful of it. About the different commandments, and then it's okay. Let's do them, because a lot of us read a lot of things in scriptures, and when we read a lot of things in scriptures, it's a lot of things we don't allow ourselves to perform and do. And that's what it said. So all 3 of those are necessary. Some person might just say, I'm just going to walk in the statue. I'm going to show up, and just do a Pesach. Or I might just come around Sukkot, whatever the case is. And then other people might say, okay, I know the law. I know what it says. But I don't feel like doing them. So I at least I studied the law. At least I know what I'm supposed to do. But it's not. But then it's not just enough to know what you're supposed to do. It's supposed to put action to it. That's why you have to also be a performance of all 3 to be in good with the Creator. And it talks about these different blessings here. And as I go through these different blessings, it's gonna be a very brief situation where it says that how you benefit. It said, then I will give you your rain in their season, and the land shall yield her produce, and the trees of the field shall yield her fruit, and your threshing shall reach unto the vintage, and the vintage shall reach unto the sowing time. And you shall eat your bread until you have enough, and dwell in your land safely. One of the greatest things is being able to say that I don't have to worry about somebody attacking me while I'm doing good. If you're doing poorly, that's never an issue where you worry about people attacking you or trying to rob you, because you have nothing for them to get. But to dwell in your land safely, they say that you're a prosperous people, and your prosperity will not be a source of your attack. Most people, when a person is wealthy, everybody eyeing on seeing how can I get to them. How can I either befriend them, or how can I gain some of their stuff? So you become a target. And then it says in the 6th verse, and I will give peace in the land, and shall lie down, and none shall make you afraid. And of course, evil beasts to cease out of the land, neither shall the sword go through your land. And you shall chase your enemies, and they shall fall before you by the sword. And 5 of you shall chase 100, and 100 of you shall chase 10,000. And your enemies shall fall before you by the sword. And so the math don't fit. If 5, chase 100, then 100 should chase 10,000. But it's showing you that the more people that work together collectively on a project, the much more impact is multiplied by them working together in unity. So this is one of the things that's being established here. And I will have respect unto you and make you fruitful and multiply you and will establish my covenant with you. So this is the Creator saying, I can respect you. Since when a God of any other ideology has to respect its creation? But the Creator is letting you know that you are able to be respected because you're performing something that's asked of you, demanded of you rather, by something that's hiding in yourself. And you're saying, this is what I want to do. And you're reaping benefits from it. And the formula is very simple that he gave you, the obey by. And he's talking about establish my covenant with you. And you shall eat old store long kept, and you shall bring forth the old store from before the new. And I will set my tabernacle among you, and my soul shall not abhor you. All right. So it's usually talking about his dwelling. He said his tabernacle amongst in the soul when abhors. But one of the things that's interesting is that sometimes you can have so much surplus in your house, and you say, okay, I got some new stuff, harvest, but I haven't finished the old harvest. And we noticed that when we were just talking about the sabbatical year, and we were talking about the crops and the grain, that just to repeat one more time, is that 3 years of the produce considered uncircumcised, 4th year holy, where you got to eat in a special area. 5th year, then you could eat it, but in the 6th year it's blessed. Now we was talking about a sabbatical year. A sabbatical year is the 6th year, so it's blessed in far as multiplication, because now in the 6th year you get a produce that lasts for 3 years, because in the 6th year you're eating from the 6th year grain or harvest, in the 7th year, and then in the 8th year you resowing the land, and the 9th year you waiting to get your harvest again. So you had 3 years of produce produced in the 6th year. So that is that's a blessing in itself, And then when we talk about the sabbatical year, um, one of the things about the sabbatical year, and plus one of the things about farming, because most people today look at farming as beneath them. I'm not a green thumb person, but everybody that exists on the planet depends on the farmer, the eco. You know what I mean? So everybody does this, and a society becomes much more greater when they're able to plant and grow and sustain themselves. A lot of things that we have today is superficial. So it's talking about an agrarian society, and all agrarian society is a actual foundation for a growth of any great civilization. But you got to be able to be self-sufficient. So we had the formula to be some of the greatest there. All right. And then it goes on about the when we mess up. I'm gonna skip on down just a little bit. I know to read a few of these things and the what we call the curses. Now most of us are familiar with the book of Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, and from the 16th verse onward, basically they talk about all the different curses that will come upon the people here. But when we start here in this particular chapter, punishment for disobedience, it goes on to say, starting from the 14th verse, and it says, before I even go there, I'd like to finish out this And I will walk among you, and I will be your God, and you shall be my people. I am the Lord your God, who brought you forth out of the land of Egypt, that you should not be their bondsmen. And I have broken the bars of your yoke and made you go upright. So, who bondsmen? Say, so you won't be the Egyptian bondsman. If the Creator hadn't stepped in, we'd be still serving the Egyptian to this very day. But the 14th verse says, but if you're not hearken unto me, and and will not do all these commandments, and if you shall reject my statutes, and if you shall abhor my ordinances, so that you will not do all my commandments, but break my covenant, I will also do this unto you. I will appoint terror over you, even consumption and fever, and thou shalt make and that shall make thy eyes to fail, and to sow languish, and you shall sow your seed in vain, for your enemies shall eat it. And I will set my face against you, and shall be smitten before your enemies. They that hate you shall rule over you, and you shall flee when none pursues you. And if you not, and if you will not yet for these things hearken unto me, then I will chastise you 7 times more for your sin, and I'll break the pride of your power, and I'll make your heavens as iron and your earth as brass, and your strength shall be spent in vain. For your land shall not yield her produce, neither shall the trees of the land yield her fruit. And if you will walk contrary unto me and will not hearken unto me, I will bring 7 times more plagues according to your sins. All right. So some of the stuff that we read about, when we read compare this with Deuteronomy, we think Deuteronomy is bad, but these admonishments, and most times traditionally in the synagogue, when they read this and making an aliyah, they try to read this very, it depends on the tradition, but some will read it very, very low. We could barely hear it because it's just so terrifying that they try to read it very, very low tone, or read through it very, very, very swiftly on a low tone, because they are really destructive tools to a society. And this is because we won't keep the covenant of our Creator. And one of the things that we look at in this particular portion, and I'm not going to go into a lot because it'd take too much time, but one of the things that we look at in this particular portion is that we're it's worse than the Deuteronomy part, because it's constantly going 7 times more. And then if you got hit 7 times for a particular punishment, and then it says, okay, and you would continue, I'm going to increase that 7 times by another 7 times. And then if you continue, I'm going to increase that another 7 times by an additional 7 times. So we're constantly, when we compare that with Deuteronomy, this is far worse than the book of Deuteronomy, because we're getting hit a little bit here, a little bit more here, a little bit more here, a little bit more in this direction. But the intensity is not as severe as mentioned here in the book of Leviticus. And so most of us think about Deuteronomy as being rough, but this is one of the roughest consequences here. And it talks about the 34th. I want to skip right down here to the 34th chapter, which is an interesting thing. And we just read about the Yobel and the last portion and all that, which is a time when you declare liberty. But in the 34th verse of the same 26th chapter, it says, then shall the land be paid for her Sabbaths, as long as it lies desolate, and ye are in your enemy's land. Even then shall the land rest and repay her Sabbaths. As long as it lies desolate, it shall have rest, even the rest which it had not in your Sabbaths when you dwell upon it. So that's talking about even then that it's talking about captivity, desolation. And as I've spoken on before, that we have an area where we was told that when we went to Babylon, that the 7 years that we was in Babylon, that the land had to enjoy its Shabbat. And one of the interesting things here, I'm going to skip all the way down. I'm just going to skip, just highlight some things because it'll be a little bit long. All right, so let's talk about how we get out of some of this situation, just a little bit. From the 40th verse, and they shall confess their iniquities and the iniquities of their fathers, and their treachery which they committed against me, and also that they have walked contrary unto me. I also will walk contrary unto them, and bring them into the land of their enemies. And if then perchance their uncircumcised heart be humble, and that they then be paid the punishment of their iniquity. So that means you ain't going away free. I mean, you're going to have to go through some things. Then will I remember my covenant with Jacob, and also my covenant with Isaac, and also my covenant with Abraham. And I will remember, and I will remember the land. For the land shall lie forsaken without them, and shall be paid her Sabbath while she lieth desolate without them. All right. And they shall be paid the punishment of their iniquity, because they rejected my ordinances, and their soul abhorred my statutes. All right, so now I'm going to skip down to the 45th verse. And it says, but I will, for their sake, remember the covenant of their ancestors, whom I brought forth out of the land of Egypt, in the sight of the nations, that I might be their God. I am the Lord. I wanted to end it in that particular portion I was going to speak on pretty much. And on a good note, one of the things is this the only time that you read about God saying, along with the covenant that he made with our forefathers, with Jacob, with Isaac, and he went in a reverse order. He went from Yaakov to Abraham, as opposed to normal orders going from Abraham to Isaac. He went in a reverse order, and that's something you could discuss more, why the order being reversed in this particular incident here. But the most unique thing I find in this area is that just the only portion where you find that the Creator said, I'm going to remember the land. Remember the land. And say, what did the land do? What's about the land that's so special? And yet he said the land is mine. When we were talking about in the previous Sidra, he talked about the land belonged to him, but he remembered the land. So that means that we must also, we are put here to protect the environment. We find out the first, the first atrocity that was done by Cain when he slew his brother Abel, and it said his blood cried out from the ground. So when the blood cried out from the ground, that's one area where a man did something against a man, and said the blood, the life of the flesh is in the blood. But prior to that, when Adam and Eve sinned in the garden, God cursed the land for man's sake. He never cursed the man. He never cursed the woman. He only cursed the land, and he cursed the serpent. That's the only two things he cursed. So now, and it's for what man had done. So the Creator gonna remember, and he always brings things in balance. The land. So this is the only time you're gonna read in scriptures where he said, "I remember," pretty much the land. It's a unique time, the first time that the land is so important to the Creator that he treated like a living being, which it is in essence. And I just want to bring out just one more little point here. It goes into about vows of persons, how much a person is worth in 27th chapter, but it ends off with tithes. And I like to just focus on tithes. And it says, all the tithes of the land, which is 27:30, I'm saying. Because we talk about, persons, beasts, and tithes in the land, and, valuations of a person. How much is a person worth? Well, the Creator enumerates how much a person worth according to your age, and Deuteronomy, the 27th chapter, and which is interesting, is about how much they're worth as pretty much a field hand. See, most people think, my value decreased as I got to a certain age, and the value of a man and a woman is different, at a certain age. So they said, well, I must be worth more than you because God gave me more value than you. And that's not true. The valuation is based on field work, who's able to put in the work. And so therefore, you say, well, how much work can a baby do? And I just want to just touch on this a little bit. I'm going to talk about the valuation. It's the 27th chapter. When a man shall clearly utter a vow of a person unto the Lord according to thy valuation, then thy valuation be for the male from 20 years old even unto 60 years old. Even thy valuation should be 50 shekels of silver after the shekels of the sanctuary. And if it be a female, then thy valuation shall be 30 shekels. And if, and then it says, and if it be from 5 years old even unto 20 years old. All right. So, and then I'm going to skip down to the 6th verse. It says, and if it be from a month old even to 5 years old, then the valuation shall be for a male 5 shekels of silver, and for a female, that valuation shall be 3 shekels of silver. And you say, valuation. One, what can a person at a month old, a child do at a month old? And why would they have a valuation there? Those are things that, need to be discussed. Why? We know that the redemption of a firstborn, the opening matrix, have a certain amount, basically 5 shekels, but, silver. But why here? Now, a female for the first time, that's a month old, is given a valuation of 3 shekels. And mind you now, when we was told for the men of war to give a ransom for their life, they had to give a half shekel. And they gave a half shekel. And when it was being counted, they had to give a half a shekel. So now, with the 3 shekels being more for a month-old baby and, for a female, and a 5 shekels being much more, than, for a month-old baby, how is it a grown man that's going out to the battle or making an account in the sanctuary, giving a half shekels is equivalent to that? What is the significance of it? And so this area here that we gloss over, a lot in various, congregations, is to think about what is the real value of a human being and where your value stands today and what you actually worth. because a lot of people don't really realize how much they actually work. So those are some things to consider as you're going forward. Then it talks about tithes. All right. So 30th chapter, verse. And all the tithes of the land, whether of the seed of the land or the fruit of the trees, is the Lord's. It is holy unto the Lord. And if a man will redeem aught of the tithe, he shall add unto it a fifth part there, and all of the tithe of the herds of the flock, or the flock, whatsoever passes under the rod, the tenth shall be holy unto the Lord. He shall not inquire whether it be good or bad, neither shall he change it. And if he change it at all, then both it and that which it is changed shall be holy. It shall be not be redeemed. So in other words, your 10th goat, say your 10th goat. All right, you got one long leg, one short leg. All right, it still belongs to the Creator. But I say I want to make the sacrifice of the 10th goat because it's supposed to be done, and they say, okay, I'm going to give him a perfect goat without a blemish. So both of those are given to the Creator, through passing it on to the Levites, to the Creator. But they should not be exchanged at all. So the things that Creator said, if the 10th one is if it's a lame animal, then you got to look at yourself. Why is your 10th animal is lame? Why your 10th animals have a blemish? So, and yet it's supposed to be belong to God. Did that reflect your lifestyle? So those are some of the things that you got to consider as we go forward in those areas there. All right. And then if you do, it takes you to add a fifth. And it said, and these are the commandments which the Lord commanded Moses for the children of Israel in Mount Sinai. So, I mean, we got a lot of laws at Mount Sinai. And we think about over the period of time that we got the laws, of all these different laws, 10 years later, 30 years later. But when Moses was up there for 40 days and 40 nights in the first time with the person, the Creator, he's being taught all this plus, all that's written plus that he's got from the Lord, from the Creator at that one time. It just took us time to absorb and act upon it. And then when these laws are being taught about the land, the intention was to try to get us there quicker, but it took us 40 years. So a lot of laws we're reading about all became theoretical in that area. And when we finish the book of Leviticus rather, the normal saying is kazak, kazak, mani kazak, which means be strong, let us make one another strong. 5 times in a year, 5 times in a year, everybody that reads the scriptures empower and encourage one another on those areas there of being strong, be strong, and let us make one another strong. That's when we complete the book, because we felt that we reached an accomplishment. And a lot of times we set goals for ourselves, but more so than the goal is always the journey. When we talk about the 42 stages and stops that we read about in the book of Deuteronomy, you say, well, okay, what we did there. Some things we might identify that might have happened. Some things we might not identify what was happening. But those stops we made, were they the goal? No. Those was the journeys, the travels. And when we go through life, we got to focus on our travel and see how we learning and picking up on the travel. Because once the goal is reached, then what you do from there. So it's the journeys that you're making and say, did I learn anything as I'm making this move? When you look over your life in school and stuff like that, and you say, okay, here I am today. Here I am today. Is that your goal? Is that your end? Or you're looking over and say, well, what did I learn from some of my travels over these years and where I still want to go? All right. So these are some things that we got to try to adhere to. I'm just going to read a little bit of Jeremiah the Haftorah because it's very interesting in Jeremiah. And then we go into the book of Kohelet. So Jeremiah is 16. I'm just going to read just a little bit of the opening. And this is 1619, which is an interesting number for us of melanated people when we think about this particular portion, 1619, one of the prominent dates that we tend to think about slavery, and we think about, the mass slave trade coming into this particular northern hemisphere. But nevertheless, it says in the book, let me go here, excuse me, I flip over it just a little bit in this particular thing. Now, Jeremiah, like I said, he was an interesting person. We read a little bit about him dealing with buying a field last time, the last Haftorah. Normally, the last week's Haftorah is rarely ever read when it's done, when it's not a leap year, and they have a combined portion for certain books. So when we look at this part of Jeremiah, and it says the opening of Jeremiah. It said, "O Lord, my strength and my fortress and my refuge in the day of affliction, the nations shall come unto thee from the ends of the earth, and shall say, surely your fathers have inherited vanity and things wherein there is no profit." I want to stop there because we're going to go into Kohelet, and there's always about a lot of vanity in that. And so here we are saying that in the beginning of Jeremiah, this particular Haftorah, Bekothai, and shall a man make God unto himself, and there are no gods? Therefore, behold, I will this once cause them to know. I will cause them to know my hand and my might, and they shall know that my name is the Lord. All right. So why would it start off with, talking about the, oh Lord, my strength and my fortress and my refuge, and then it talks about the nations shall come unto thee from the ends of the earth, and shall say, all right, because they're gonna realize that the ideology that they had was not the true and living God. See, when we get into a lot of stuff in Jeremiah, most of the things, it's not so much about we worshiping other gods was a problem. What was the problem was our moral decay, our promiscuous lifestyles that's, under the guise of religious, using the word they used to, sometime today, a cult. Because when we check it out carefully, we was told not to worship other gods, but the sun and the moon, the stars, other nations was told they could do that as a stepping stone, but not us. So what was the Hittites being judged by? What was the Sodomites being judged by? What was those 5 cities being judged by? They're being judged by their moral decay, how they treat one another, and the immorality, the ungodly human actions towards each other and people. So that's what we are judged by, because when we think about what it is, how did we have all these different idol gods and worship all these other gods in the land, had all these different cults in the land as Israelites? We know the statues don't move. We know they don't speak, but it's the doctrine that's behind it. We say, okay, we could pray this way and we'll do that way. That's why sometimes we got to be careful about adopting certain things, because sometimes we will say, okay, it's not a violation, but what I have in mind, is a violation, and that's what's being taught throughout the prophecy of Jeremiah. I'm not going to read the whole thing of Jeremiah, but I just want to bring out the next verse. It says in the 17th chapter, it says, then the sin of Judah is written with a pen of iron and with the point of a diamond. It is graven upon the tables of their heart and upon the horns of their altars. So that's saying, while their children remember their altars and their groves by the green tree upon the high hills, right? A lot of illicit acts took place in those different areas when you study the history of it. So it was a moral thing that was going on. And they said this is what the children of Yehudah did. When they say the children of Yehudah, that means those pretty much left in the land, because we know in Jeremiah's time, the northern kingdom had already been taken away. So Jeremiah is saying, all we have here is the kingdom of the south, Yehudah, Benjamin, Levites, and a few other people that's there, but the northern kingdom had been taken away. And he's saying that this is the moral decay that's going on here in this area here. And then it goes on to talk about, I'm going to skip down to the 5th verse. It says, thus said the Lord, cursed be the man that trusteth in man and maketh flesh his arm, and whose heart departed from the Lord. All right. So a lot of times when they talk about cursed be the man that trusted in man, it uses two terms here, Gaver and Adam. Now, why do you use those two terms for a man, Gaver and Adam? Gaver is man. A man say, look here, I'm robust, I'm strong, I'm physical. That's a Gaver. From the term like a Gabor is a warrior, So that's a Gaver. They use that same term in the book of Deuteronomy about cross-dressing. So that's a man that believes in his physical strength. But when they talk about Adam, that means the intellect. He done reasoned himself out and said, oh, with my own strength and my own body, my own power, I can accomplish certain things. And this is what he's saying. You physically think you got it, and intellectually you reason yourself and agree with yourself that my intellect enough to save me. And the creator said that's not going to work. So we think about a man trusting in another man outside of ourselves. Like, oh, I'm gonna trust in brother Slim. I'm trusting in brother Slim because brother Slim, I know, he can make things happen for me. It's not talking about that. It's talking about the individual within himself. The individual thinking that he's all that and that he by himself could accomplish that. It's almost people say, well, I do this myself. I handle this myself. I'm capable of myself. I'm gonna, nobody else could do this like I can do it. And that's what it's talking about in that area. And then I'm just going to skip on down to the 13th verse of that chapter. And it says, O Lord, the hope of Israel, all that forsake thee, he shall be ashamed, and they that departed from me shall be written in the earth, because they have forsaken the Lord, the fountain of living waters. A couple of times Jeremiah used that thing. But he used an analogy in this particular portion also about a tree planted by the waters that never faded. And then when we get to this last verse, I want to bring out, it says, heal me, O Lord, and I shall be healed. Save me, and I shall be saved. But thou art my praise. This is what they say, the eighth part of the Amida prayer that's said every morning, but it's said in the plural. And it's said in the plural in the sense that, while we praying, I'm not just praying for myself. I'm praying for everybody and everyone. So when we talk about the Amida prayer, you hear that actually, though you're saying it as an individual, you say it in the plural. We have a similar thing when we read the Shema. And Shema, when we talk about, binding for a sign upon our hand, and they be frontlet between our eyes. The first part of the Shema is in the singular. And the second part, the next portion of the blessings of the Shema that is said in the normal prayer book is in the plural. Because now we're trying to also empower and work for everybody else to do the same thing. So with that, we're going to go straight to the book of Ecclesiastes. And as we go into the book of Ecclesiastes, I want to let you know that this is out of all the chapters of Ecclesiastes that we read, the 12 chapters of Ecclesiastes, that this is one of the most popular part of Ecclesiastes that's said all the time. And mostly it's said at funerals. So I'm just going to read a little bit to go through a little bit for it. The first 8 verses. And then I'm going to paraphrase some of the stuff in the 8 verses, and then elaborate on the rest, because this is the parts they go in a funeral that's mostly always said with the Christian background, Israelite background, whatever. They tend to focus on that as in a form of encouragement. So you can start in the book of Kohelet, the 3rd chapter.
We're in the book of Ecclesiastes.
Right.
We're in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, starting from verse 1. Hallelujah. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to cast away. A time to rend and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. What
All right,
profit?
Before we go any further, I just want to focus on that one, all those together, and paraphrase it, because, like I said, these are some of the things that's mostly spoken on at funerals, and everybody knows the time for everything. And a lot of times, when we wake up, we're given a certain amount of time, not only in our lives, but we also tend to waste more time in our lives than we do producing and being productive within the time that's allotted us each and every day. And then a lot of times when a person passed on, we say, wow, they went too soon. But they was given the same amount of time you was given every single day they live. So it's not how long you live, it's how well you live in the time that's allotted to you. So in the funerals, they use certain verses. I'm just read it like this here. It said, a time to be born and time to die. We do not choose to be born. We do not choose to die. But we do choose the way we live. We cannot hope to avoid death, but we can invest a part of ourselves in those things which never die, and thus live on beyond our mortal span. A time to plant and a time to harvest. What has been planted, we harvest. What others have planted before us. The harvest of a good life sustains those who survive. May we so plant that those who come after us will enjoy a harvest which nourishes life and hope. Then we got things where it says a time to break down and a time to build up. Now's the time to break down the walls of estrangement, which separate brother from brother, parents from children, husbands from wives, each of us from God. Now's the time to build up the bonds of caring, which draw us closer to one another in love. A time to mourn and a time to rejoice. At this time, we mourn for the dead. We mourn also for the days we have wasted, for the things we did not offer, for the tears we did not wipe away, for the deeds we left undone. In time, the pain will subside. Then may we rejoice in gratitude for the years we share, for the memories which death cannot take from us. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones. Let us cast away the heavy rocks of remorse and regret, which lies on many hearts, the rubble of blasted dreams and collapsed hopes. May we soon find the strength to gather the sturdy stones alone, with which to rebuild lives of confidence and hope. A time to seek and a time to lose. Now is the time to seek the good in each other and in our recollection of others. Now is the time to lose the pettiness and callousness, which diminishes our statutes and shrink our horizons. A time to keep and a time to cast away. Now is time to keep our faith in the God who heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. It's also the time to cast away the bitterness, resentment, and anger which death leaves behind. A time to love and a time to hate. Now is time to love, to support, and to enrich one another. Now also the time to hate malice and meanness and selfishness, to avoid all that deprives life of its beauty and joy. A time for war and a time for peace. Now it's time to wage war against despair, hopelessness, to sustain a stubborn faith that the time will surely come when those who now mourn will again know serenity, spirit, and inner peace. That's taken from a book called Minion of Comfort, when they say it at a funeral. So they elaborate more, and I figure it was appropriate to read that in this particular portion of a time, because a lot of times we, more often than not, are poor management of our time. And even if we have a laudable enterprise, we tend not to divest the work that need to be endeavored to achieve that enterprise most efficiently. So that's one of the things we talk about here, and that's why we look at it. So everything must be done, in not only in order but on a timely matter. So now we're gonna pick up from the 9th verse.
Verse 9, it reads, "What profit have he that worketh in that he laboreth? I have seen the task which God hath given to the sons of men to be exercised therewith. He hath made everything beautiful in his time. Also he hath set the world in their heart. Yet so that man cannot find out the work that God hath done from the beginning even to the end. I know."
Hold it. All right. So while we're here on this planet, we're supposed to not only govern the planet, we're supposed to learn from it. We're supposed to learn from our environments, and that's what this world is about. The word laboratory, the root of it is labor, and we're supposed to actually labor in our endeavors to say, well, okay, what did I learn today? When your child go to school, it's more so than what he learned today. Do he have any good questions today from what they experienced and learned? So a lot of times when you sit back at the end of the day, the best way to monitor how well spent your time is when you question what what you know, when you question, what did you accomplish, in a day, you know? But let's go a little bit further. 'Cause it's only like 22 verses here.
Verse 12, it reads, I know that there is nothing better for them than to rejoice and to get pleasure so long as they live.
All
But,
right.
but also that every man shall eat and drink and enjoy pleasure, for all his labor is the gift of God.
And that's I mean, from your labor, from the work you put in, that's a gift from the Creator, So he says nothing better to rejoice, for them to rejoice in, all right, and get pleasure. And now this is what Solomon's saying at a point. When you put the work in, you're supposed to enjoy what you put in, that work. But then where do it lead you from that point on? All right, so in the 14th verse, it says,
14 reads, I know that whatsoever God doeth, it shall be forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken from it. And God hath so made it that man shall fear before him.
Okay, and that's something, right? You know what? Why is it man fear God? A man that looks and learns from his environment and surroundings, he will realize how fragile he is. And that's what he's saying, that that when you look and see, well, I just put a seed in, and yet this come up. And what happened if it didn't come up? It's not like I'm digging it up to see if it's coming up. I'm looking at how high that mountain is, and yet it'd be difficult for me to ascend to that mountain, to the top of it. I'm looking at the birds flying in open firmament, in the sky, and yet if I just go up and climb up high up in a tree to grab a certain fruit, I can't fly. I might fall. So you start to think about your frailty. When you see how the oceans be battling the beaches, the shores, and continue, and the waves never cease to come back and forth over and over again, then you start to think about your vulnerability. When you looking for the sun in the daytime, to come up, or you worried about the cold and the elements, or when the rain coming down, or when there's no rain at all. So then when you start to think of those things, then you realize your mortality and as far as your frailty before the Creator. And that's when you start to begin to fear God. Continue.
Verse 15, it reads, that which is have been long ago, and that which is to be have already been, and God seeketh that which is pursued.
And that's something. It said, God seeketh that which is pursued. What do the Creator need to see? This is something you got to think about. The Creator don't need to pursue anything. So what is the actual Kohelet Solomon is talking about now? And so that's something I'm gonna leave for you to discuss even further. But going to the 16th verse.
Verse 16, it reads, and moreover I saw under the sun in the place of justice that wickedness was there, and in the place of righteousness that wickedness was there. I said in my heart, the righteous and the wicked God will judge, for there is a time there for every purpose and for every work.
All right, hold it right there. All right, the righteous and the wicked God will judge. Now, we can understand him judging the wicked, but what he could be judging the righteous for? That should be the operative question. Because somebody doing something wrong, you say, okay, now we got an issue. I got to set you straight. But if you're righteous, what are you being judged for? Job was a righteous and upright man, one that feared God and eschewed evil. And yet his so-called friends said, Job, we're going to let the record reflect. We're going to go back in history. We figure we understand God. We understand what's going on. So Nobody in your condition, looking bad as you look, had all that drama hit you like that, it's got to say that they're innocent. They can't say you're innocent. So this is what they trying to, reflect on, but God, it let you know that even the righteous person is being judged. And the thing is that sometimes you think you're right. Now, Job, the issue, and I always reflect on Job, Eob, as in Hebrew is the word for, um, is that we ourselves constantly look at our lives and say, well, why is God putting this on us? And in Job's case, he's trying to figure out, look, I don't know anything I did wrong. I can't see anything I did wrong. All right. I stayed away. I lived a certain lifestyle. I avoided. I even offer up continually for other people, which is my children. And yet all this come upon me. So what was the contest? And people will lose sight of the contest. The contest wasn't whether Job, understood anything. The contest was, would he curse God? That was the contest. Not whether Job can, deduce an actual truth about his situation. He spent all the time figuring his situation out, but yet, he even in one of his most dire moments, he said, God, curse the day that I was born. Is that your day alone? Or, I don't know anyone that's born on a day that nobody else is born on. So if you say curse the day you was born, didn't you curse a world of people that was born on that same day? So is that a righteous move? Yet you're talking in first, and you're reflecting and focusing on yourself, but you're neglecting that it ain't just you alone, that you're talking about. So a lot of times we read about we would say, well, why am I, I'm paying for the iniquities of my fathers and upon the children up to the third and fourth generation of them that hate me. Why is it that 4 generations that the iniquities of my father is still upon me? And why God's still checking 4 generations down, and then showing mercy to thousands them that love me and keep my commandments. One of the things when we look at is that we already read that the soul that's in it shall die. But yet God, still hold us responsible for our fellow man. You read when the time of Jeremiah, it says we stumble upon each other in sin because we are responsible for each and one another. The the first question man ever asked God when God was concerned about Abel is that, am I my brother's keeper? That's the first question man ever asked God, and it come from a guy that killed somebody, that slew somebody, and then we are responsible for one another. And that's a lot of times people figure you're all up in your business. But the thing is that we have a responsibility for one another. And because if we don't have a responsibility for one another, then we don't care, you know. And so these are some of the things we're learning here from this particular pasuk, this verse. All right. So we're gonna start in the pick it up in the 17th verse. 18, 18. Okay. Yeah, 18. Yeah.
Verse 18, it reads, I said in my heart, it is because of the sons of men that God may sift them, and that they may see that they themselves are but as beasts.
All right there. That means right there, sometimes the creator got to sort you out, put you in this here grouping. So the creator got to group you up so you can look at each other, you know. and say, well, man, all these guys are like me, or am I like all these guys? You know, so that's what a SIF is. I mean, you separating, and grouping, and say, and you're gonna learn about who's in my class. Continue.
Verse 19. For that which befalleth the sons of men befalleth beasts. Even one
Uh-huh.
thing befalleth them. As the one dieth, so dieth the other. Yea, they have all one breath, so that man have no preeminence above a beast, for all is vanity.
All right there. So in other words, after you look at the grouping, we look at the grouping that's there, and that we see ourselves as, as beasts. You say, well, what make me so great? They die, I die. Why I got a responsibility and they don't have a responsibility? So sometimes people look at that. Why are you holding me responsible? You don't hold so and so responsible. But because of our job and our role, so we started reasoning and saying, look, and this is Solomon saying, and what's so good about the early parts of Ecclesiastes? Solomon is mostly speaking concerning himself throughout this whole thing, a process, all the way to the 10th chapter of Ecclesiastes. He's actually talking about himself, his experiences, and his problems that he faced in life with all this here wisdom that he had. All right, continue.
It reads, verse 20. All go unto one place, all are of the dust, and all return to dust.
Uh-huh.
Who knoweth the spirit of man, whether it goeth upward, and the spirit of beast, whether it goeth downward to the earth?
All right there. So in other words, that's a question, a philosophical question that Solomon had a problem trying to figure out. Wise as he is, where did the beast spirit go? Some of you all got some kind of spirit. Just that God had hands on and breathed us the breath of life. But at the end of all things, since we start off with a time and a season, for everything under the sun. So that's what the topic in this particular chapter is: a time and a season for everything under the sun. Where do the beast spirit go when it leaves and life leaves it? And where do minds go? You see some old movies and stuff like that, the horse going, cowboy pictures sometime, just different movies. Um, the horse is gone and the rider himself and the horse reunite later on, in some kind of afterlife with all that kind of stuff. He riding up on this great horse again. Um, they have even a doctrine, I think, thinking from the Hadith about, the prophet, of the Muslims, Muhammad supposed to, ascend into heaven on this horse called Barak or whatever it is, something to that effect. But the thing is that they be reunited in death. We don't know. Some cultures, they say when you die, everything you love, you'll be united with. In other cultures, what I mean, they just figure it's all about you, what you're gonna get after after you pass. But in the book here, Solomon letting you know that he don't know if the spirit of beast go up or down, or man go up and down. He don't know. And wise as he was, though we all tend to claim we figure it out. In some circles we say, "How old am I, boss? This is what's going to happen. There's going to be a paradise. This is going to be the world that you're going to have every great thing going on for you." But Solomon confessing that he don't know that, and he's saying that man had no preeminence over the beast. Is my spirit greater than that of a beast spirit? This is what Solomon asking. All right, continue. The last verse.
Verse 22, it reads, Wherefore I perceived that there is nothing better than that a man should rejoice in his works, for that is his portion. For who shall bring him to see what shall be after him? Hallelujah.
Right. So right then and there, he said, "Look, I gotta reach some kind of conclusion here, because I can't figure this thing out." Now, if Solomon can't figure some things out, and you listen to people, give you all this talk about the the afterlife real deep. Now we know, one thing he makes it clear that death is not the end of this thing. As we read the Ecclesiastes, that there's something going on beyond that. But he can't figure it out with all the wisdom he has exactly how it should be, exactly what's going to be your role. Though you have a lot of traditional viewpoints, about how old my bar and about the Garden Adam, the Garden of Paradise, eating the Garden of Eden, as they would say, and how you're going to live and how you're going to be after you leave this physical plane here. But Solomon have a problem with it right now in his talk, because he's saying, who's going to say what come after you? No one can tell you what's going to come after you. So Solomon had that, and he said, well, while I'm here, I'm working with this. I know, I know what I like. I know what I can enjoy. But then that only going to be for a moment, only for a moment. How long the moment? I cannot tell. That's why he said it's a time and a season. But he never say how long of the time. How long is the season? So what we need to do and what we learn from this point here is that we need to divest our time in the most godly manner, instead of let time march on, we mark our time. So I hope you got something out of what I said, any mistakes by my own, and I'm agree to everybody, Shalom Aleichem in the early Shabbat Shalom. And like I said again, we all get a chance to strengthen one another as we finish the book of Vayikra, and then we pursue counting this Omer and reaching that time of our sanctification, which is reaching the time of Shavuot. Shalom Aleichem.
Also, Nasik, condolences go out to the family of the elder that passed away. Do you know her?
Yafa.
Yafa. I didn't want to.
Yafa, Elisha's sister. Our condolences from on the platform here, D.C.B. platform. The condolences for Elisha Levy from in South Carolina for the loss of a sister, older sister, Yafa, who was, like I said, I spoke about, is a really, really a great person that will be surely missed.
Hallelujah. Torah about Nasik. May the Most High God bless each and every one of you. Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. May Yah bless you with all the endeavors of your mind that you desire in righteousness. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Let's get knowledge, wisdom, understanding. We'll do our standing. All praises to the Most High, His laws and commandments. The hot CHOKMAH here to push it through your speakers. Judgment, truth, and love should be coming from the leaders. Yeah, knowledge, wisdom, understanding. We'll do our standing. All praises to the Most High, His laws and commandments. The hot CHOKMAH here to push it through your speakers.